Hello everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast, Building a Better InfoSec Pro with Gamification. My name is Keaton Nguyen, and I'll be moderating today's webcast. Today's featured speakers are Ed Skoudis, Jeff McJunkin, and Josh Wright. If at any time during the webcast you have any questions for Ed, Jeff, or Josh, please enter them into the GoToWebinar interface in the questions window. We'll be answering them during the Q&A session at the end of the presentation. And with that, I would like to hand the presentation over to Ed Skoudis.
Hello and welcome. Keith, thank you for your kind introduction. My name is Ed Skoudis. It is fantastic to see all the folks here this afternoon. We have something very special for you. I am joined this afternoon on the webcast by Mr. Jeff McJunkin and Mr. Joshua Wright. And I'd like to start out by introducing the three of us. I am a SANS instructor. I am also the director of the SANS NetWars and CyberCity projects. And we're here today to talk to you about gamification and how you can approach information security challenges. And we'll talk about some of the NetWars challenges, some of the CyberCity stuff, as well as other challenges that you could participate in for free so that you can build your skills. And we're going to give you tips and tricks for how to do that and do it effectively. I'm delighted to be joined by Jeff McJunkin. Jeff works for me at CounterHack. And Jeff is really an amazing guy. Jeff has been playing information security challenges, capture the flag events, games for many, many years. He played NetWars for several years, and he did such a great job just playing NetWars. He was working in a variety of different organizations, and he did such a great job playing it. We'd watch him play. We'd watch him refine his skills and capabilities and bring up questions and be very creative in how he approached things. So a year and a half ago, we hired him on board so that he could join us in creating NetWars challenges, in thinking about gamification, and helping us push the envelope. So Jeff is kind of here representing the player's perspective, but also the challenge designer's perspective. Also, I asked Jeff some questions, to kind of give you a feel for what Jeff is like. And I asked him, what was your favorite video game as a kid? And he told me it was Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. I also asked him what his favorite dessert topping is, because I think you can tell a lot about a person asking him his dessert topping. He said it was crushed up Reese's peanut butter cups. I'm also joined by Josh Wright. Josh is one of the smartest guys I know. I've worked with Josh for over 10 years. It's been a real honor to be able to work with him. He's incredible from an intellect perspective. He's also able to get a huge amount of work done. Josh is a SANS instructor. He has written the SANS Security 617 class, which is just tremendous, and it's on wireless security and pen testing. He wrote the SANS Security 575 class on mobile device security and penetration testing. He just does fantastic work. He is also our technical lead over the CyberCity project, which is a cyber range that deals with cyber and kinetic action, and he is one of the main developers of NetWars challenges. I asked Josh some questions that I thought might help you get a better insight into who he is. I asked him his favorite day of the week. He said it was Thursday, which I think speaks volumes about a guy. Thursday. I also asked him which Smurf he most identifies with. He said Handy Smurf, which, given how much work Josh gets done, I think Handy Smurf is the right way to go. All right, so that's who is talking to you today. It's Mr. Jeff McJunkin, Mr. Joshua Wright, and Ed Skoudis. Our topic is on gamification and how you can use that to build your skills. So let's go ahead and move on to the next slide. I'd like to remind you, if you have any questions, please do type them into the session. We'll answer those questions at the end of this session. All right, so we'll move on to the next slide. What is gamification? I mean, it's in the title of our talk here. The idea of gamification has been around for many years, and it's using the principles of games and play and fun to encourage specific behaviors in people and to encourage them to learn. And gamification is going on throughout different parts of the world and different parts of our economy. People are using games to develop their skills, maybe technological skills, computer skills. They're using it to build their skills in mathematics, in linguistics, and so forth. So gamification is all over the place. Gamification is also being used to help market products. One of the early examples of gamification was the McDonald's Monopoly game. McDonald's put this game together, and their customers came and play, and The game incented them to buy more French fries. It worked out beautifully well for them. So high schools are experimenting with gamification, and this idea of that when you're working your way through a set of challenges, to present it as though it's fun and with a game and a scenario and a narrative arc. All of these things come together in gamification. Another big principle of gamification is to allow people to start working at different parts of a problem. Rather than saying you have to solve X before you can even see Y, before you can even see Z, but instead to give them a surface, an attack surface, they can start working through from different angles based on the skills and based on their own approach. That makes it more fun. Now, there might be, as part of your gamification, an unlock reveal thing that happens. So you have to do either X, Y, or Z first, and then that's going to unlock the next portion of the challenge. All of these things fit together as part of gamification. And I think it's fantastic. In fact, at SANS, we have a lot of different classes. And what we hear from students is that the thing they like most about the classes is the hands-on stuff. And they always ask for more hands-on. So we have some classes that are 40% hands-on. We have some classes that are 50% hands-on. And we used to joke that, if we wrote a class that was like 80% hands-on, people would want even more hands-on. So we actually did that. We wrote a class that's 80% hands-on. It's called SANS Security 561. And it's built on top of NetWars. The point here is, in these hands-on classes, we've tried to do some gamification. And many SANS classes have capture the flag games built into them, where you have fun. You learn, you build your skills, you verify your skills. Each one of the SANS pen test classes has gamification built into the class. And we do that across the pen test curriculum. Outside of the pen test curriculum, SANS is doing this kind of stuff also in the cyber defense curriculum and in the digital forensics and incident response, the DFIR curriculum. So SANS many years ago, it was about 5 years ago, built this thing called NetWars, and we're constantly adding to it and tweaking it and creating new challenges and so forth. And the goal of NetWars was to gamify InfoSec learning, to take all of these principles of gamification that me and my team have been studying, to take all the lessons that we've learned in building capture the flag games for our classes, and to try to create a best of breed learning environment that is all gamified. Now, sometimes when people hear gamification, they think, oh, it's just a game, or that's silly, that's just fun, it's not important. This actually kind of breaks my heart. I've had students, seriously, that have taken the 504 class from me or the 560 class from me, and we get to the day 6 capture the flag game, I've had students who say, oh, it's just a game. I don't want to play the game. If games turn you off, think of it as a simulation. And I try to tell them that. Don't think of it as a game, although games are fun and you can learn from games. But if you're too good for games, that's fine. Think of it as a simulation. Or, if you want, you could call it a cyber range. The military extensively uses NetWars. The Air Force uses it. The Army uses it. Several other different groups use NetWars and CyberCity to build their skills. So if the word game turns you off, call it a cyber range. Or if you prefer, how about a simulator? It's an action-packed simulator with lots of challenges built into it. And when we're building these challenges, I'd like to call on Josh and Jeff to comment on this in a minute. But one of our focuses is to make this real world. We don't want to create challenges that we put into this stuff that are kind of like silly, meaningless things, something that you'd never see in the real world. We really do try to make these into stuff that you as an InfoSec pro will see. One of my favorite comments that we get is when somebody does a NetWars challenge and they say to us, hey, I was able to solve that one really quick because I saw it in my job last week. Or sometimes we'll get an email from somebody who did a little NetWars thing, and they'll email us and they'll say, hey, I solved this in NetWars last week. I got back to my job and I had to apply the same thing right in my job. It's like, phew. When that happens, it totally makes my day. So NetWars is this cyber range, this simulator, and you can earn CPEs and bragging rights by participating in it. So that's what we've got for NetWars. Josh or Jeff, did you have any comments or thoughts on the real-world nature of this stuff and trying to make it real-world, and how you as designers approach that?
Well, this is Josh. At CounterHack, we focus a lot of our time on developing challenges for NetWars, making NetWars more fun and more exciting, but we also engage in consulting services for companies. So we'll do penetration tests. We have some high-profile customers that come to us with very specific security analysis needs, and we get to spend a lot of time and have a lot of fun doing that kind of work. And from my perspective as an author of a challenge, I love to be able to integrate that kind of learning, those kinds of lessons into NetWars, particularly when I'm learning something new, or I've been able to successfully innovate in something, or I've come up with a new attack idea that maybe I haven't seen before. I love bringing that kind of lesson into NetWars so that when other people are going through NetWars, they're getting those same lessons and hopefully not struggling quite as much as I had to do the first time around when it was new to me. So that aspect of keeping things practical is definitely ingrained, and it's something that we apply both in the development of NetWars and what we do in our consulting practice with CounterHack.
Yeah, one of the things that we do when we're developing new challenges is we want to make sure that the challenge is not needle in the haystack stuff. That is, the only way you'll get this one right is if you're lucky, or if you have some sort of bizarre esoteric knowledge that no one else would ever have. You happen to be a big fan of ancient philosophy, and that's the only way you can solve this thing. No, we really do focus on practicality. And we do offer, like I said, CPEs for those people who participate in NetWars tournaments. Those happen over the evenings at SANS events and some other events like RSA. And then, of course, bragging rights for your friends. When people win NetWars, they get a coin if you're among the top winners. And that challenge coin has a neat little cipher on the back. So the challenges never end. They just keep going. And I'd like to move on now to some specific points for you guys. We want to share with you, as challenge developers and challenge players, we want to share with you some ideas for you guys to use challenges, whether they be NetWars or others, and we'll give you some resources where you can get other challenges that are available for free on the internet, and give you some ideas of how to approach those so you can get the most value out of them. So let's go ahead and move to the next slide, and I'll turn it over to Josh. Tip number 1.
Thanks, Ed. So tip number 1 that I wanted to share is don't get frustrated. When you're participating in NetWars, when you're participating in other free gamification learning services for InfoSec, it's important to remember that you're playing a game. As an author at SANS, we have capture the flag challenges at the end of my classes, and for me it's a terrific experience because I get to see all of those students that have been in my class all week long applying those skills and using them in new and creative ways, not with somebody holding their hand like in a lab exercise, but actually recalling it from what they learned of the week and really committing that stuff to memory. Now, this is not always easy. The stuff that we do as information security professionals is hard, and I think other people don't always realize that, or maybe they forget. And I remember so clearly, I had this student one time who was in my mobile device security class. It was on day 6, and I'm as happy as can be, and I'm buzzing around the room, and I'm going to different teams, and I'm high-fiving people as they get through challenges, and everything is great. And I see a student on a team of 4, and he's in the corner of this little cube, and the other 3 players are visibly and physically shying away from him. Like, they're trying to give this guy a little space. And this one student, he's got his elbows on the table, and he's got his index finger and his middle finger rubbing his temples on each side of his head. And I'm seeing that he's a little stressed out. And something's getting this guy down, and I'm thinking, I'm going to go over and I'm going to help us. I'm going to make his day. We're going to get through whatever struggle this is, and he's going to remember that lesson forever. And I'm so excited. I go over to him and I said, hey man, I saw. Are you struggling with something? What can I do for you? What can I help you with? And he looks up at me as if he's surprised that I'm standing there, and all of a sudden, he gets a little snarl in his lip, he gets this kind of shiny look in his eyes, and he bunches both hands and fists in front of my face, and he says, I just need a minute. whoa. and that was the cue to me to say, okay, buddy, you can have a minute. Security, can we have security over here? So he let the frustration get way too high, and he was struggling with the challenge, and he just let that kind of inner tension and inner turmoil boil up to the point where he was so frustrated. After I spoke to him, he packed up his stuff and left. And to this day, I remember that so clearly, and thinking that I failed that student. And I don't want people to fail at this. I want you guys to have fun in these challenges and to use them to learn and retain that information for a long period of time. So the lesson that I wanted to share is, when you're playing these InfoSec challenges, don't let frustration get you down. You will get frustrated with tools, with questions, game assets not staying up. There will be times when stuff is not going your way. This is not solely something that happens in gamification of InfoSec. It happens in the real world too. Tools fail all the time. And that's something that we have to learn to live with and to be able to work with. What we need to remember when we're doing these challenges is not to let that stuff get in our way. You will fail sometimes. I fail all the times. Michael Jordan is famous for saying how many shots he missed in his entire life, how many games he lost in his stats. But you pick yourself up and you use it to become stronger. You use it to become a better player, a better InfoSec professional. And through those challenges, through those experiences, you get better and better at what you do, and now you can become a rock star through that process. So make sure, don't get frustrated when we're doing these things. Remember that you are playing a game. I don't know.
That's really well said. Really well said.
Ed, I don't know if you had more to add to that, or Jeff?
Yeah, so there was a great comment that just came in on the, somebody typed it in as a question, but the person said, there's an old samurai saying, it says, fall down 7 times, get up 8. And that is so important. And I find sometimes you got to take a step back, kind of get outside of yourself, and even laugh a little bit at it. So this idea of not getting frustrated. One of the things that we do when we're running a NetWars tournament is we try to walk around and sort of diffuse that frustration. It's a reality. I mean, as Josh points out, it can get there. But you know, we walk around, we try to shuck and jive with people a little bit, try to have fun. We try to play some nice music. At least I try to play nice music. Sometimes we let Jeff play music too, and it's nice, I guess. So, but you know, we dim the light, create an atmosphere. And when we do these NetWars tournaments, we often, not always, but we often have you know, an open bar with some beer and some chips, but it's really to sort of foster that fun environment. Yeah. Jeff, did you have anything to kick in there on that one?
Yeah, I kind of liken it to my days as a system administrator sometimes, that it's okay to have 7 different ways that fail, as long as you have 8 different ideas. So not getting too frustrated and too hung up on one particular approach seems to work well. If you get the one step, and I'll talk about this later, I think the next slide actually, but having multiple approaches goes very well with not getting frustrated. Don't get too invested in any one given approach.
Indeed. Well, let's go ahead and move on to the next slide, Jeff. If you want to talk about the sort of challenge developer's view of the participants, I think that would be good.
Sure. So the idea, as we're making challenges, this is a different style of learning than encountering it for the first time in the, quote, real world. We want you to succeed. There are some people that make challenges that they want you to flail at it and have a really tough time. No, we really, really do want you to learn and make it through each challenge that comes up. We do want to take some time. We don't want to make it too easy, but we do want you to succeed. So as we're writing the question's phrasing, as there's text around each question, if you get information, a post by a particular user, you might see, oh, he really likes this thing or this particular Wikipedia page. I wonder if I should use that for, let's say, password guessing attacks. Every single every single line of text that we include in each challenge is almost always us, as loudly as we can get away with, saying, here's a good way to think about this problem. So I talked about the flavor text for a user. There's also, let's see, a couple other pieces. In searching for, so I say Google is always your friend. Remember when you're using Google, break the problem up into smaller problems. For example, if you're trying to get one specific executable to run from within a Python shell, your Google search term shouldn't be how do I run like /root/netwars specific executable.sh from Python. That's not going to get you very far. But thinking general and taking it one piece at a time seems you get much better results there. I don't know. There's a certain magic to thinking in Google's terms, thinking how it comes through.
True. There's also, you know, when we do craft these challenges, as Jeff said, we really do, we try to be really careful about how we phrase it so as to not steer you wrong. That's an important thing. There are some challenges out there where they're designed to actually kind of frustrate you and get you lost. That's not the way we design our challenges. And most capture the flag or challenge designers are really careful to try to minimize the frustration you might see. We do want you to succeed. And we do signal that in language. Let me tell you, not about NetWars, but about our holiday hack challenges. We do these holiday hack challenges every year. My team and I work on them a lot. Josh Wright is tremendous at building out these assets and making the things just function really smoothly. We've done these holiday hack challenges now for 11 years in a row. And the one that we did in 2014 was particularly interesting. It was based on Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, and it was called A Christmas Hacking Carol. So the idea there is Scrooge is this kind of evil old hacker, and he just wants to watch the world burn and make a lot of money. And he's visited by the ghosts of hacking past, hacking present, and hacking future. And each of them issues hacking challenges to Scrooge. Now, the reason I bring up the Holiday Hacking Challenge is because we give them away. They're free. You can go to them right now. And people ask me all the time, how long are you going to keep these assets up? How long are the targets going to be up? As long as we can. So you can go and do the 2014 Hacking Challenge, Holiday Hacking Challenge right now. And those assets for you to hack are there for you. You could do the 2013 one. It's up. 2012 one. It's up. 2011 one. It's up. You can go to all those right now. Just all you have to do is do a Google search, right? Google is always your friend. 2014 Holiday Hack Challenge, and you'll find it. But if you look at the 2014 Holiday Hack Challenge, the ghost of hacking past is Alan Turing. And we give you an IP address, and the way that we phrase the questions around that one, we're trying to signal to you that you have to social engineer whomever you're going to find at that IP address. And it turns out it's an AI bot that Josh Wright wrote, and it's really a clever little bot, and you interact with her, and you try to social engineer. So the language is designed to kind of indicate to you to social engineer. The ghost of hacking present is Johnny Long. And it seemed right? He's the founder of Hackers for Charity. So Johnny, he challenges you, and I got his permission to use his name in the challenge. And he challenges you to hack into this target site. He gives you another IP address, and you got to hack into it. And we wanted to be pretty blatant about the hacks that you use for that. So Johnny actually says, go to this site. What you find there will shock your heart. Shock your heart. So it was shell shock and heartbleed. Both of those will work on that site. So if you've never launched a shell shock or heartbleed attack, you can. We've got a system that Josh Wright built. It's on the net, and it's an amazing thing. This thing has been exploited hundreds, thousands of times, and it keeps on plugging along. So kudos to Josh for that. And then, you know, Jeff, he's been instrumental in the holiday hacks in testing them, because we test them again and again and again to make sure that they all work. So read the language carefully, because in the holiday hacks, I know we're trying to signal to you different approaches that you might use. Any other thoughts on this one, guys? Josh, you got anything you want to kick in here?
Yeah, as a designer, it's always true we want you to succeed, but there is a line between too easy and too hard that is sometimes hard to meet. For example, I learn best when I struggle with something. So I went away this weekend, I brought my iPad with me, and I read 4 books on Node.js, jQuery, and JavaScript programming. And that was fine, but reading a book is easy. You know, this morning I sat down and I tried to solve a problem with Node.js, and that was much harder because there was no easy answer for it. So for me, that lesson, that struggle to solve that problem this morning is going to stick with me. I will retain that knowledge much, much better than any of the words that I read over the weekend in any of the 4 books that I covered. We want you to succeed in challenges, but there needs to be a little bit of struggle. If somebody is always giving you the answers to things, you're going to be able to get a great score on the challenge, but you're not going to retain that information in the long run. So this kind of goes back to the first one, don't let yourself get frustrated, but also recognize that you will have to put some energy, and there will be some challenge in here, and that's intentionally applied so that you can retain the knowledge you're gathering instead of just using it and then letting it fly out your head the second it's not being used anymore.
You know, I've long said it's really easy to write easy challenges, and it's really easy to write really hard challenges. What's hard is writing a challenge that is the appropriate level of difficulty for your audience. And fine-tuning that, it's one of the hardest things we do when we're developing these challenges. And we adjust sometimes too. You know, we go out there, when we do these holiday hack challenges, we try to write them, you know, so that some of the parts are very easy, some of the parts are very hard. And sometimes we go out there and the stuff we think is easy is hard, and the stuff we think is hard is easy, and you don't know until you meet an audience. That's why for the holiday hack challenge, we put the stuff out there and we watch how people do. But for NetWars, we actually have a group of NetWars beta testers that go through and make sure that we've hit our target appropriately for that. Because when we launch the NetWars stuff, we want to make sure that it is really fine-tuned to its target. So good stuff, guys. Let's move on to the next slide.
Oh, I was actually thinking about how the challenges broke up this morning, and I kind of realized that there are kind of 2 aha moments that we end up aiming for. The first for the challenges, what's the right approach? How do I start? And then the second being the actual implementation. So if it's a cookie stealing challenge through cross-site scripting, that first part, every single little flavor text, all that surrounding text is a really strong hint towards that first aha moment. Because we talked before about not wanting you to spend too much time going down chasing the wrong lead.
Right.
But I just wanted to keep that in mind.
Well said, well said.
Also importantly, we're far more likely to give hints on getting the right approach than major hints as to the actual implementation.
Right. Good, good. Well, another tip that we have for you, I feel pretty strongly about this. I believe that to develop your skills requires an investment in time and an investment in effort. And what I strongly recommend to everybody listening to us here is that you set aside time every week to work your way through some challenges. These can be free challenges on the internet. They could be other challenges that you found or subscribe to or what have you. But make an appointment. Set a date for this. Like, you know, every Saturday at 10 a.m. maybe you'll do it. Or maybe it's going to be, you know, every Thursday evening you're going to spend an hour or 2 hours just developing your skills. By setting that time aside and not allowing anything else to interfere with that time, you will find marked improvement over time. You know, give it a few months and you'll start saying, man, I'm getting better. I'm getting better and better and better. It's kind of like working out at the gym, something I don't do that often. I wish I did more. But I am able, while I'm not able to set aside time for the gym, I am able to set aside time regularly for developing my skills. That is so crucial, and I enjoy that time. Keep at it, have fun, and you're saying, Ed, where can I find challenges that I can go to for free? And SANS publishes a SANS pen test poster. I have a picture of the poster right here on the screen. You can see it over here. And on that poster, we have a mind map that was created by Aman Hardikar. And this mind map includes hundreds of free challenges available on the internet. Now, some of these challenges require you to download an image, which you run in VMware on your own system, and others are kind of hack this website challenges. And they're across the spectrum of difficulty. Some are very easy, some are very hard. but we put this together on the SANS pen test poster. You can find this poster if you do a Google search for SANS pen test poster. Look at the 2015 version. It was we launched this thing in March of 2015. Maybe you've received one in the mail. If you have, that's cool. If you haven't, you can download the image and look at it. Also, Aman Hardikar updates his mind map so that you can refer to that as well. So I recommend you schedule some time for yourself. Not time at the gym or time at the spa, but time on the keyboard, working your way through these challenges. Do it once a week or more. Look, if you can do 2 or 3 times a week, that's even better. But at least once a week for an hour or two, and I think you'll be astonished after 2 or 3 months about how good you're doing and how good you feel about it. Josh or Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, I know that myself personally. I need to set time aside very regularly to be able to participate and to be able to keep improving my skill set, because time will go by and I have a lot of students, they say, this is a great class, Josh, I really enjoyed it. It's too bad that I'm never going to be able to use any of this in my job. You know, it's kind of disappointing. If you want to be good at InfoSec, you need to improve your skills. You need to constantly be expanding into new areas. And, you know, everybody's busy. There's never enough time for all the things that we want to do in this world, but you need to find time to be able to do this kind of stuff. Me personally, I get up at 4:30 on Sundays. Now that is fairly hideous, I admit, but I spend about 3 hours just with coffee, reading, going over things, you know, papers that I marked during the week that I didn't get a chance to read, and I spend that time, that dedicated time, trying to keep my skills sharp. Now that might not work for everybody, and frankly, it's hard getting up at that hour on Sunday mornings, but it's what I need to do to be able to stay sharp in my skills. And you know, similarly, you need to be able to find that time to be able to keep working on those skills. Maybe you're not doing pen testing, or maybe you're not doing forensics today. You want to get into those fields. That's wonderful. You just need to find that time to be able to continue building those skills to be able to qualify for some of those positions.
Absolutely, and have fun while you're doing it.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. This next one is a great tip from Jeff. So Jeff, tip number 4, what do you say?
So the big tip here, obviously, take breaks. So we circled those couple of empty seats. Some people would like to say that they're not working hard or not making progress. I would probably argue that they're making the most progress of likely anyone there at that time. They've walked away. They have acknowledged that there's an issue, that they can't find the right approach, or they're having a tough time getting the right implementation, and they're letting their mind work on it and not getting stuck just with hands on keyboard. So background processing is just as important as time in the seat. It's really easy to get too focused on one particular approach and not see either the bigger picture or another approach that, boy, that seems dumb, that seems too simple, but it's a hacking competition, right? Any way that solves the challenge is a valid approach. So walking away from your seat and thinking through the issue, thinking about other approaches, that's valuable time. And for some reason, changing your physical perspective, so the literal walking away, for me at least, it seems to help with changing the mental perspective for a particular issue. Does that sound about right to Ed, Josh?
Definitely.
Most definitely. I also like it. Yeah, go ahead, Josh.
Oh, I was going to say that all of my breakthroughs, the things that I'm most proud about in my career, have all happened in the craziest of places and never at my desk in front of a computer. You know, and just we're short on time, so I'll save the story. Ask me directly some other time. But you know, these. It's so important to get away. I find myself struggling with something and becoming frustrated, and walking away and then coming back to it later, or even just giving it a few hours, and I find that more often than not the answers come to me much easier and much better when I'm not actively engaging in something that I'm struggling with.
Indeed, indeed. I really like this this picture here because it really shows these people got up and stepped out. and I'm sure they came back to amazing progress, right? This is something I do myself. I go for my daily morning walks, and I find, I get up in the morning at a crazy early hour, kind of like Josh does on Sundays. I'll work for a half hour, 45 minutes, and then I go for a walk. And in my walk, I just think about stuff and think about the problems of the day, how to solve them, and then I stop thinking about them while I'm still on my walk. And I find my most productive time is when I stop thinking about those problems. Every once in a while, a miracle occurs, and the answer just appears in my brain. So I think Jeff's point here is really well said. All right, next one. I'll take this next one. This one seems to be very appropriate for me. Don't overthink it, right? When you're working your way through a problem, maybe it's one of those challenges that we have the mind map on the SANS pen test poster. I just typed, by the way, into the little chat session the URL. It was provided to me by Jonathan. Thank you, Jonathan. It's the URL for the SANS pen test poster, so you can go and look at that poster. But as you're working through those challenges, like the ones on the poster, if you see the question that you're trying to answer, you might have in your mind 1 or 2 or 3 ways that you could approach the problem, right? I mean, that's good. You've got some experience. You've got 3 different ways you could do this. My recommendation to you is to start with the simplest of those approaches first, the simplest for you to implement. And the reason you start with the simplest one is, first of all, it just might be true, right? I mean, that might just absolutely work. Now, it might be too simplistic to work, but in even starting with that, you'll learn more about the problem as you start working down that path, and you will see additional avenues by which you can solve it. This is something I do every single day, multiple times. I got a problem. It might be a technological problem. It might be a personnel problem. It might be a political problem, whatever it is. I think, okay, how could I address this problem? How could I solve it? And then I start thinking, okay, which is the easiest of these solutions? And let me start implementing that. But then in doing so, I might see other paths that actually give me a better solution. So start with the easiest stuff first. It might not work, but it's going to open your eyes to other possibilities. And I tell you, this is the foundations of troubleshooting, and it's allowed me to keep as much of my sanity as I've been able to maintain over the years. So here you can also see we got some really amazing NetWars veterans on this photo here. Some just incredible folks that have just scored really, really well in NetWars. Josh or Jeff, do you have anything to add to this don't overthink it issue here?
Well, I was going to say when Ed talks about personnel problems, he means to say present company excluded.
Of course, so, Josh. I'm not talking about you at all.
I think that's the situation. This, frankly, out of all the tips, this is the one that I need to pay attention to the most. And I'm constantly overthinking challenges, and I'm constantly thinking that my target is doing lots of things that they are really not doing. That's good, but it can also be bad at times too. So I'm going to take this point to heart and try to apply it more in my day-to-day activities. Jeff?
Well said. Well said. Jeff, you have anything on this one? Are you ready to move on to the next one?
I do actually. When thinking about, I mentioned it before, as a sysadmin, coming up with a bunch of approaches, and it's okay to have as n-1 approaches fail as long as you have more approaches left. And in the same idea, if you think of SQL injection, how many things have to go perfectly wrong? You have to have user input, non-sanitized, the database has to have the permissions for you to see that particular area, and you have to, let's see, even for code injection, to actually gain code execution, it's a lot of things have to line up, yet it happens so often. It's really easy to think a question is more complicated than it is, even in the real world.
Well said.
Indeed, indeed. Let's yeah, well said. Let's go to the next one. It's our final point for you, and then we've got some amazing questions and answers here that we'd like to go through as well. So Josh, why don't you take this final one here?
So this last one is, I think, one that I hope everybody here takes away as an important lesson, and that is to celebrate your successes. I teach a lot of classes. I see people doing the most amazing things. You know, in my wireless hacking class, people are taking down wireless infrastructure, they're exploiting wireless cameras in the mobile class, they're manipulating Android applications to do these things that the developers never intended for them to do. Amazing things, things that people couldn't even dream of doing. And then they don't take the 30 seconds to sit back and say, man, that was awesome, and kind of savor that. A lot of times, particularly when we're playing in a competition or in challenges, you're just so focused on completing the question and then next question, that people lose sight of how amazing you are, in how amazing the things that you are accomplishing are. And I think people need to take a little time to celebrate those things, even if it's only 30 seconds. Instead of just skipping right to the next task, think of the amazing things that we're accomplishing and how you are becoming a better InfoSec pro in the process. I really hope you guys take this to heart, and when you're doing things, and even if it's not in gamification, just things in your life that you're doing, work things, solving problems with creative approaches, defending against an attacker, catching somebody before they get into the organization, in any of these things, you don't always get that pat on the back. Other people won't always recognize the amazing things that you do, but we can self-recognize, and I find that personally when I do that, I find it very rewarding. It's not bragging. I'm not being boastful or proud about these things, but I'm using it to motivate me to want to do more, to get that feeling again, to get to that next challenge and that next win. And celebrating that success is a great way to be able to reinforce the amazing things that you guys are doing.
So Josh, as you're describing that, I just thought of two really good illustrations of that very thing. And it's outside of the scope of gamification, but it still, I think, applies. Wouldn't it be cool if you worked in a place where every week you wrote up a summary of the amazing stuff you did that week so that you could reflect upon your successes of that week, and then somebody would write back to you and say, dude, that was so cool, thank you for doing that. Wouldn't you love that, like a weekly status summary?
That would be amazing.
Wouldn't that be great?
That would be amazing.
Yeah, we do that in our company, by the way. At CounterHack, everybody writes a weekly status report, and we do it mostly for communications, just to share, hey, I'm working on this, I'm working on that, because we're working on so many different things. We got some guys that are working on NetWars, other people are working on Cyber City, we got other people working on Holiday Hack Challenge, we got people working on all kinds of things. So we just do this to survive for communications. That said, I know when I'm writing up my weekly status report, it makes me step back for 30 seconds or 4 minutes and say, wow, that was a heck of a week. The other thing that we do in our company is every year on December 31st, we have a yearly summary where we just look back and say, look at all the stuff that we did in the year. And you know, it takes a few hours to put that together, but it is not only sort of a diary of the year-by-year progression of what we've accomplished working together. It's just the right thing to do. I mean, it makes you feel good about your accomplishments, it underscores them, and then gives you ideas about how to build on them in the future. So in other words, Josh's point here, celebrate your successes, take 30 seconds as you're working through gamification, actually can apply even broader in your career. Have you thought about maybe once a month, once a quarter, once a year, writing down what you've accomplished that year? That can be really motivational. And I know some of you are sitting there saying, dude, it would be so depressing. You have no idea. Actually, you probably have no idea. I'll bet you've done a lot in the last year. You might have taken this class. You might have competed in this CTF. You might have developed your Linux skills or Windows skills, or you did this or that. Write that down. That's cool. That's neat. And celebrate that. And of course, as you work your way through challenges based on what we're discussing here, I think you'll find as your skills develop, you'll have more and more to reflect upon and to write down. So,
I would like to add that at CounterHack, as Ed says, he puts together a year-end reflection of all the amazing things that we do as a company. And Ed is a wonderfully tremendous and gifted writer and knows how to articulate the amazing things that are accomplished through vocabulary and through grammar and prose. But I would second that as well. If Ed was not doing that for the company, I think that I would need to, because frankly, That is a great way to measure your successes year in and year out. And time can go by and you don't realize that you're doing all these amazing things, and time just seems to pass us by all the time. But that's a wonderful thing that Ed does for us as employees, for the company. But certainly, even if your boss is not doing that for you, it's something that you can do, and I think there's tremendous benefit in it.
Thanks, man. So those are the 6 tips that we wanted to share with you. And if I could go back, I'd like to kind of summarize those 6 tips. Let me go back here. So just, right from the top of the slides. Tip 1, don't get frustrated, right? It's a game. Have fun. Build your skills. Tip 2, remember the challenge developer wants you to succeed and might tip his or her hand there a little bit so you can get some insight into how to solve it. Tip 3, set aside time to improve yourself on a weekly basis. Make it an appointment. Tip 4, take breaks. Let your mind process what you're working on. Tip 5, don't overthink it. Really important stuff there. And then tip 6, really celebrate your successes. Applying these 6 ideas, I think, will allow you to have more fun and to develop your skills further. And I'd like to now move over to questions and answers. We've had some really good questions here. Let me ask them of Josh and of Jeff, so that we can get some more of their insights and more things that they share. So let's see here. There was a, let's see. Okay. Okay, here's a question. Are there answers or solutions to the past holiday hack challenges? I'll start that one, and Josh, if you want to kick in afterwards, please do. But we do have official answers that we choose each year, and if you do a Google search for Holiday Hack Challenge and then put the year after it and then put winners or answers, you will find that. But Josh, do you want to talk about the process of us going through and judging that and choosing the best and the winning answers?
Yeah, the first time I participated with Ed in judging the Holiday Hack answers, it was overwhelming, hundreds of responses. And when we say responses, some of the responses are one page, but many of them are richly illustrated 30, 40-page documents, source code, and all sorts of amazing things that people put together. And typically what happens is my analysis style is to go through and catch all the ones that got all the answers the way I expected them to, but the ones that are really hard to judge is the responses that come back finding the answers in ways that I never would have even considered doing. And for me, that's a tremendously valuable learning experience, and I love seeing that stuff, but it really makes me very excited, and it gives me a lot of hope for all the amazing things that people are doing in this industry and what we're doing. But yes, those answers are out there, and you definitely take a look at some of the top winners, but I would also spend a little time looking at some of the other, perhaps not as high winners. I know some people post their answers on blog sites and things like that, even if they're not the #1 answer. And I think you can get a lot of different perspective on a challenge just by reading a couple of participants' answers.
We got another question here that came. Lee asked the question, and very similar question, virtually identical, was from Blazej. Blazej, I think that's how you say it. And it's about this. Can you easily quantify how long it takes from inception to delivery for any given challenge question? Or Blazej's variation on that is, how much time and effort, resources, and so forth are needed to create a small-size CTF? He mentions he's thinking about creating one on Unix for his Windows team. First of all, I'd encourage you to do that. I think creating a challenge for your coworkers to work on is a fantastic idea. But Jeff, do you have any thought? I mean, it's hard to characterize this. I understand how much time it takes you to develop a challenge, but can you give us some ideas and some tips? Josh, can you kick in anything too? What should they expect or think about when it comes to challenge dev?
Definitely, Jeff here. I think it does take some time. It honestly seems to me that for me, taking a long walk with a piece of paper and a pencil and just walking through, okay, what are the pieces I want involved? I mean, the step 1 is, what are the pieces you want to be in this challenge? Step 3 is having the complete designs challenge. Step 2 for me seems to be walk around until magic happens and you have an idea of how you want to put these pieces together. And for me, getting away from the computer is the most valuable piece for me there. Honestly, it always ends up taking longer than I expect. I think that's because it's still getting used to the idea of challenge creation. It takes time.
And Jeff is definitely right. It does take us a long time. We are working on a refresh of NetWars Tournament. Jeff is leading that project, and I've been helping him out with that. And I would say, Jeff, we have put in maybe 1,000 hours. I'm just guessing, but it's a lot of time. Now, that is not to say that it requires 1,000 hours to put together a small CTF. Now, you could, for example, go to vulnhub.com, and there's a lot of community-contributed virtualized systems designed specifically for hacking. You could take something like that and then walk through the challenge of hacking that system. Maybe you want to teach your Windows guys SQL injection on Linux systems and what some of the differences are, or command injection on Linux systems. Find a VulnHub target that meets that criteria. You exploit that target and then put together a Microsoft Word document or an Excel spreadsheet that asks questions that have to be answered along the way. You could probably do that in 8-12 hours. That probably wouldn't be a huge investment in time, and you're starting with something else that somebody's already put together. If you want to start putting together your own small challenges, you can start little. You can make your own virtualized, maybe Ubuntu Linux system, find exploit du jour to get root on the system, and then plant something that they need access to. You can build challenges fairly easily. It's finding the line of difficulty in ease of use and turning that into valuable lessons that becomes more and more complicated as you become more sophisticated in the design. But getting started, you could certainly do something in 8 to 10 hours and have a great asset to share with your team and establish yourself as an educational resource in the company that is leading other people on the team by training them. That's an amazing thing to do with very little investment in your time, and as you get more and more sophisticated, it can take up a lot more time depending on what your goals are.
Exactly. I've seen people who will spend 8 or 10 hours developing a challenge, and I recommend, his name is pronounced Boage, so I appreciate that, Boage. I would recommend you spend 8 or 10 hours and try to design an easy one. Really an easy one. You say, oh, but they're going to be bored when it's, have a lunch where, have people bring lunch in like a brown bag, or order pizza and say, we're going to do a CTF, it's going to run an hour and a half, we'll do it over lunch, it's something I put together, it's easy, you guys will have fun with it. You'll learn a lot in how they approach your easy one, and you may find that your easy one is a lot harder than you think, because it's easy for you, but harder for them. So try that, spend 8 or 10, 12 hours developing it, invite people for lunch, tell them to bring a lunch with them, or order pizza for the team, and I think that'll get you rolling, and it'll be fun. We got a really good question here from Blesson. And it's dealing with NetWars, and I think this would be a great one for Josh to answer. Does NetWars include any mobile app challenges for Android or iOS? And he also asked a related question, buffer overflow stuff. How is that addressed? So Josh?
Definitely. It's very timely. So we do include a lot of mobile dev attack stuff in NetWars challenges. In different courses, we have different focus areas. So I'm thinking of several challenges where I'm the resident Java/Android developer for CounterHack. So I've written probably 10 different Android applications that do specific things that people have to reverse engineer, manipulate, cull valuable data out of, use some advanced tools like Drozer to manipulate Android intents and things like that. We also do it for iOS. It's a little harder with iOS because there is no iOS simulator that we can revert easily if things get broken, but we definitely have iOS file system dumps. We have iOS backup data. We have got a couple of scenarios where you exploit a Windows box, and once you're on that Windows 7 or Windows 8 box, you have to pillage the iTunes backup off of the data on that target system to be able to get useful information out of it. So we definitely have scenarios like that. We have a really fun new thing that we're trying to do with the NetWars tournament that I was just talking about, that project that Jeff is leading. I put together a challenge called the Gate of Graham. Now, I'm not going to give a whole lot of detail around it, but it does include buffer overflow exploits, and we have typically shied away from that, but we find that we're getting more and more requests for more complex challenges. This is not a requirement. Participants in NetWars don't have to be able to put together buffer overflow exploits to be able to complete missions. We're not quite there yet where we're expecting people to come with that skill set, but we are offering that to people, and we're making it available. It's the kind of situation where you play NetWars and maybe you get through 30% of all the missions, which I think would be remarkable for your first time, and then you take away this virtualized system, you develop your buffer overflow exploit, and you come back and play it against a real target the next time. So we're trying to adapt it so that we're not expecting you to write a buffer overflow in the 6 hours that you would have during NetWars tournament play, but we're giving you more and more opportunity to be able to build and grow into different skill set areas.
Very good, Josh. By the way, there were a couple of comments that people wrote in here saying that Josh is an awesome writer too. You are, man. You can spin together some prose that is very compelling. So not only are you good at writing the code and the challenges, you do some really, really good writing.
Well, thank you. Coming from Ed, that means a lot. Thank you.
It's so true. Leslie asks a really good question. Could you please talk a little bit about what's upcoming for Cyber City? And I'll go on this one, and then if you guys want to kick in and add some stuff, I welcome you to. So for those that don't know, Cyber City is an extension of NetWars into the physical world. So we built this NetWars thing. We offer it, SANS evenings and such, and it's available online in NetWars Continuous, so you get 4 months of access to a whole separate set of challenges from the ones you get in the evening. And we had some of our military customers come to us, and they said, we love the NetWars stuff, and we're using it in our curricula, but we need the tie-in with kinetic infrastructures. Cyber action can cause kinetic impact. This is by maybe attacking industrial control systems. So we built something called Cyber City. Cyber City is a miniaturized city. It's 6 feet by 8 feet in size. And on top of the table is a little city. It's actual little physical buildings. And we have 5 streaming video cameras so you can look in and see what's happening there. Under the table, we have all these SCADA systems and a bunch of virtual machines that implement an actual city. And people engage in missions. We currently have 19 missions defined within Cyber City, and we're building new missions all the time. I have a guy on our team. His name is Tom Van Norman, and he's one of the best industrial control systems security people in the world. He joined the team last September, and we were at DEF CON, and he was running the industrial control system village there and was doing such an awesome job with it. He was running it with a couple other people too. But it's like, man, I would love to have him on the team. So he joined the team, and he's building out additional ICS missions for Cyber City. And then to Leslie's point, we've learned a lot in building the miniature Cyber City, and people are engaged in missions, working their way through that. We teach a SANS class called SANS 562, which is a class on Cyber City. It's a 6-day class. You spend 5 days working on missions. It's 80% and more hands-on. And then the 6th day, it's red on blue. So you're part of a team, and your team simultaneously has to do red stuff where you're hacking the other teams, and blue stuff where you're defending your own territory. So it's a cool class. It's called SANS Security 562, and it's on Cyber City. But the other thing that we're kind of heading to in the future, based on the experiences we've got from building the miniature city, we are in discussions right now with some military folks of building full-sized missions that will integrate boots-on-the-ground warriors with cyber warriors so that they can collaborate and achieve their effects, stopping bad guys from doing bad things, from both a physical, boots-on-the-ground kinetic perspective and a cyber influencing kinetic perspective. The contracts are still being drawn up right now. The negotiations are underway. We have assigned Tom Van Norman from our team. He is working, 50% of his time is on Cyber City development, that's the miniature one, and 50% of his time is actually right now, he's working on how we're going to build the full-scale missions. So it kind of gives you a glimpse as to where it's headed. Josh or Jeff, did you have any additional points you want to kick in on that one?
I think it was well covered. It's a very exciting development.
Very excited, yes. So let's go ahead. There's still some additional wonderful questions, but we're coming up toward the top of the hour. There's a few questions that are being asked about NetWars and how I can participate in it. That's why I put on the bottom of the screen here, sans.org/NetWars, and you can see there's different forms of NetWars. There's the tournament, there's the continuous, there's different ways it's being offered. Also, if you come to a medium-sized or large-sized SANS event, we have NetWars tournaments there. Please do register. If you're taking a full class, we offer it at no extra charge, and it's fun. So have fun with this stuff. And let me just turn it over to first Jeff and then Josh for any closing ideas, words of encouragement that you have for people that have joined us. I'd like to thank everybody for being here, but Jeff, you want to go up first?
Sure. I actually had one note from before when we were talking about reflecting on your wins. I know some people don't seem to like taking time to look at what they've done. Some people feel it has too much to do with ego. One other note, that it is helpful, because when you reflect on those wins, that memory that you're going past of finding that issue, successfully exploiting it, that memory will be stronger, which does help you later on when you encounter that same issue in the real world. So it is a valuable time spent, and not only for your own self-satisfaction.
Very good. Josh, thoughts?
I hope folks can take away these 6 lessons. I was just jotting them down myself, and I'm going to paste into the chat channel here. We talked about try not to get frustrated. We want you to succeed. Set aside time to build your skills. Take breaks. Take the easy approach first and celebrate your success. Write that down on a note card. Put it in a document on your desktop. Put it somewhere where you can reference that. This is not kind of the typical SANS webcast where we talk about really in-depth technical topics, but I think these skills will help you tremendously, and I hope the folks that are here and listening will be able to kind of internalize those, remember them, keep reminding yourself about them, and keep applying them, not just when you're doing gamification of IT, but in all the things that you're doing in your careers and in your lives. I think that would be really helpful.
Very good, Josh. Hey, I appreciate that. If anybody has any additional questions, they can certainly reach out to me via email. My email address is ed@counterhack.com. counterhack.com. I will see that any questions that you have are answered either directly by me, or if it's more in Josh's area or more in Jeff McJunkin's area, I'll see that they respond to you as well. And I'd like to again thank you so much for joining us on this webcast. We know it's an investment of your time. We hope that we've given you some ideas, some resources that you can go to and start developing your skills. Please dig into it. I mean, here it is, right? The early part of this week. Why don't you set some time aside later this week and try to kick the tires on one of those challenges, or just read more about it, one of those challenges that's included on that pen test poster. I do hope you enjoy it, and if you are coming to a SANS event in the near future where there is NetWars, please do sign up for it, swing by, come and say hi to me or Josh or Jeff. Tim Medine runs a lot of the NetWars events for us as well, and several other folks. So with that, we'll go ahead and close this out. We are recording this session if you want to listen to it again, or if you want to refer it to a friend. And I'd like to thank you also to Keith. He is running the back end of this whole thing and making sure it gets recorded and such. So thank you, Keith, for your fine work on that. Let me go ahead and turn it over to Keith, and he'll close us out.
And with that, we are out of time. So thank you so much, Ed, Jeff, and Josh, for your great presentation and for bringing this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For your schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, you can visit sans.org/webcast. Until next time, take care. We hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.